Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you back to the Dynamic Decisions podcast, where we explore the strategies that drive successful decision-making in the world of business. Why? Because the best decisions come from great conversations. I'm your host, Tisha Cable, CEO of C Model Data, and today we have a remarkable leader who has mastered the art of building scalable, intentional business engines in the remote first world. Her name is Eva. She is currently a fractional operations and HR leader and also the head of operations at passion.io. Eva brings a unique combination of operational excellence and human-centered design to help companies avoid costly remote work pitfalls while building sustainable systems that actually scale in real life. Eva, thank you so much for being here with us today. Welcome to the show. I would love if you would talk more about the work that you do every day and tell us just a little bit more about you.
Hey, so happy to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me. So thank you for the great intro as well. Not much more to add from my side. So I'm Eva. I'm a head of operations at US Scale Up, and also a fractional operations and HR leader, as you said, where I'm exposed to mostly remote businesses and helping them setting up the foundations for scaling, which is super exciting. And that's one of the passions that I have, helping businesses scale, because I think there are so many little things that can break from starting a business and then trying to scale it. And that's like my sweet spot. That's where I like to help people and companies out to not only see the opportunity of the business, but to also see how you can bring the business and the people together to make it scalable and successful.
Speaking of scale, you've scaled operations across dramatically different contexts. I'm talking from micro drones, where you grew a team from 30 to over 300 employees across global entities in the US, Canada, Germany, France, Australia, to Passion.io's fully remote team across 24 countries. When you're making these kinds of high stakes decisions about the operational infrastructure that's necessary to do this, what's a strategic framework that you use to make sure that you maintain compliance, that there's cultural alignment? How do you do that?
So one of my go-to frameworks is the RAPID model. I love it. I think it's so easy to recognize. It's easy for people to understand it. So recommend, agree, perform, input, and decide. I think it's an easy framework that you can apply to so many different contexts. And it clarifies who recommends a solution, because I'm a big believer in everyone in the organization needs to have an opportunity to have a voice and have a suggestion. You need to back it up with data. You have to make a business case, but it doesn't matter who you are. You just have to go in and make your recommendation. Then they need to understand who must agree, who will perform the work, because execution is key. There's nothing without execution. Who provides input, like who do you need to speak to? And then most importantly, who makes the decision? Someone has to put that hat on and say, okay, yes or no, this is what we're going to do. I think what it prevents is the too many cooks problem, while ensuring you get the right perspectives and like different ideas and opportunities in your business. I have an example for that. So when we had to decide to like a major platform migration at Passion with incomplete technical specifications, which happens often when you're scaling, right? There's just, you don't have information. And I used Rapid to identify our CTO as the decider, which was pretty obvious, engineering as recommenders, customer success as key input provider, not to forget, and then leadership as the agree stakeholders. We made a call in 48 hours instead of weeks of circular decisions and project plans and, who needs to do what. And I think once the decision is done, you're 40% there, right? Once you have the decision and you know where you want to go and who's responsible for what, I think that's the most important part.
I like it. I like it because one, it's simple and understandable. So we like that. We've got Rapid. And number two, it's results based. So there's not going to be any gaps sitting in there that someone is going to miss a step. So really good stuff. So your approach really focuses on people experience as a product, right?
Yeah.
That's something that you talked about. And you want to enable high autonomy with high performance. Can you share some insights on what strategic decisions that you make differently when you view people operations through a product lens and how this mindset shift often impacts business outcomes.
Yeah. So one of the main principles that I live by when it comes to people experience as a product is you're building with the people, not for the people. And I think that's a major mindset shift to how HR was done previously. You're building something that you believe is good, and then you're just posing it on everyone. And you're like, this is what you're going to love now. Like, this is the new process that you're going to enjoy, and you're going to follow it, and it's going to make everything better. And I always have this picture in my mind of a couple of people sitting on a table in a closed meeting room, and they're like, this is the best thing we can do for the people. Let's go for it. Let's put our budget on it. And I think it's just so stupid. It's you're building. You hired people for a reason. You're literally paying them to do a job. And most of what you're investing in your company are your people. So the worst thing you can do is not give them a seat at the table and have a conversation with them. So people experience as a product for me means I want to speak to people. I want to understand what's the bottlenecks in their day-to-day job. Where do they see an issue? When you have customer interviews, and when I say customer interviews, I mean employee interviews, and you ask them, why do you think this company is going to fail? You're going to be so surprised about the answers. I ask every single person listening to that podcast right now who didn't ask that question to their team members. Ask them. They have a really good understanding. They're smart people if you did a good job hiring. And if you ask them, why is that business going to fail? They're going to have a pretty good answer for you for sure. And that's how I see it. It's pretty much a combination of seeing people as the good professionals they are and giving them an opportunity to have a voice and then building something with them. It's about trust. It's about integration. It's about also being transparent with them if you can't do something. So they might suggest something and they say, hey, we really want this, education budget to be doubled. We can't do that right now because we did a prioritization and this is what we're going to do with the money because we think it's the most important thing for the business at this point in time. People really appreciate that. We're so afraid to have an eye-to-eye conversation to people, and that makes us lose sight of the actual impact they can have on our decision-making processes.
Yeah, I often talk about fear has no place in the workplace because what it does is it ends up blocking real and true progress. And progress goes beyond just the money that an organization can make. Imagine if you're transparent enough as an organization that you can actually move people from stage to stage in their careers. That's actually success too. That should be meaningful too, because eventually that will impact your bottom line. Better places, the more efficient someone can be because they have more information, the better the company is. But it's really hard for people to process that. Your background is actually really unique. You combine labor law expertise with business psychology, right? You've led these big transitions like when micro drones shifted to remote work and multiple M&A processes in Germany and China. You're making these critical decisions about org level change management, compliance strategy, all of this stuff. How do you balance in those cases things like legal requirements with psychological principles to drive both business results and employee satisfaction?
So one of the first things I want to mention here, because I'm very blunt, and I think it's important to be very honest about how you approach your job. And they are super high stake decisions and they have a huge impact on the company. But I'm a big believer just in general in the 80-20 principle. So I had to come to the realization that I can't do everything at once. I can't do everything perfectly. I was the kind of person that would obsess over things. That's I always say that's the legal part of my brain. That's the master of laws kind of person who's sitting there and really kind of looking into every single potential outcome of something I'm deciding. But the reality is you can't do everything. And I think the 80-20 principle has been a lifesaver for me very often. So I'm focusing on systems that solve the biggest operational pain points first. And then I'm going to go in order of prioritization. That's helped me a lot in these situations. And then the second thing I want to mention is taking care of yourself is a really important thing when you have really high stake decisions and people are dependent on you making the right decision or implementing the right things or going into the right direction. Taking care of yourself first is always a good approach so you can be in the best position possible mentally and physically to make a good decision. there for people and explain them. And I think that's not talked about enough. So I want to like put that front and center and say, there's all the things you need, like decision-making frameworks and prioritization and all of that. But as someone being in that situation, I've learned that taking care of yourself and 80-20 principle are definitely two of the most important things to drive these things over the finish line.
Yeah, so put your mask on first, right? So when you're doing these things, how do you actually measure success? So when you're looking at people operations, infrastructure initiatives, are there any particular key performance indicators that you find to be the most telling when you're trying to assess whether or not your strategies are creating real competitive advantage or not?
I'm a big fan of revenue per employee. I can sound counterintuitive. I'm sure some of my HR peers are going to be like, oh, you want to replace people with AI. No, I don't. I really don't. But I think revenue per employee is just a really good indicator of how efficient your processes are, how good your decision making is, how fast you're moving, how involved your people are in your processes and decision making. And I've seen a really interesting trend I think I've checked it with like 5 or 6 of my clients now, because I found it super interesting. Correlation is not causation, but I've seen that a high revenue per employee has been, anecdotal evidence, I want to point that out, has been related to a high ENPS, Employee Net Promoter Score, in the companies that I've worked with, which I think is super interesting because it means that, in my opinion, from my like little digging into the other KPIs, what I've seen is that these companies specifically did a great job in aligning company vision and objectives with individual objectives and goals. And that was a key indicator for people to feel like they have value and they add value to the company. And therefore, I believe they felt empowered, they did a great job, and they increased revenue per employee because they were able to actually have an impact on the business. That's my narrative, and I think it makes a lot of sense. So that's one of my key KPIs.
So I'm about to go run my revenue per employee right now, right?
Yeah.
No, that's exactly what I was looking for. Something unique, something that represents kind of how you operate on a day-to-day basis. A lot of times, you'll get the general numbers from folks, but I'm always looking for like, what's your thing? What's your number? And what's that one where people are like, why is she continually asking us about this number? Because it's not an insight that everyone would understand. But if you explain it like you just did, then all of a sudden, hopefully listeners are listening, because now you'll go out and start thinking about your revenue per employee and then correlating and causally connecting that to other metrics in your organization. Hey, so for the audience, in addition to that, think about your own organization's, your strategy around people's work and time and people operations. What decisions have you made about culture, performance management, or compliance that have created the most meaningful impact? Share your experiences with us on LinkedIn and other social media using the Dynamic Decisions podcast. Okay, let's talk a little bit here about your leadership, okay? In addition to your work at passion.io, you've co-founded Nourish and Nonsense, building tech-forward approaches to food freedom. So again, this big, nice, wide array of things. Are there strategies that you bring forth to really build innovation and maintain operational excellence across all of these diverse business contexts, especially when you're talking in most cases about fully distributed teams?
It's an interesting experience. As you mentioned, I'm wearing a lot of different hats, and it came very naturally to me. Like one thing came after another, and it was all somehow interconnected, and it's a really, really great experience. And I'm learning a lot about myself and about effective operations and implementing things that I'm learning in one place into another place. So there are definitely a couple of things that are really important for me to look into. And one of them are knowledge silos. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I've seen with the different contexts that I'm working in, And I think it's the silent killer of scaling companies. I've seen it in consulting. I've seen it at Passion. I see it in my own company. And it's information just is so easily trapped in individuals rather than accessible systems. So that's one of the things that I think you can see across every single thing I'm touching. I'm all about making sure there are no knowledge silos, especially critical in remote environments. In this global environment where people working in an async nature, it's just really important that you bring it all together. Everyone has access to all the information they need at any point in time. Whenever you have to reach out to someone to get access to a certain information and you're dependent on them replying to you, that's an issue for me. Like, I want to know about it and I want to fix it. I think that's the number one thing that you will see me look into and integrate into all the things I'm touching when it comes to operational excellence.
Come on. Did you guys hear that, people? Are you paying attention and picking up what we like to call on Dynamic Decisions nuggets of wisdom? Good stuff. All right, here's my favorite part of this whole thing. We're going to do a decision-making persona assessment. Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah. Are you ready? And
Yes.
so I'm going to ask you 4 different questions, and they represent different decision-making approaches. And after each one, I'd like you to tell me how much asking the question that way resonates with how you actually approach decisions on a scale from 0 to 100%. The thing is, you only get 100% total across all 4 personas. So I'll give you the persona, give you a little scenario, and then you'll tell me your percentage. You'll tell me why. You'll explain it a little bit for the audience, and then we'll move on to the next one. So the thing most people get hung up on is they always go, well, can you just give them all to me now? And then I can rank them? The answer is no. Okay. So here we go. The first one is called the feeler. People first, operations leader. So this persona prioritizes employee experience and cultural alignment, often weighing human impact and organizational values alongside business metrics. When considering new operational processes, remote work policies, or organizational changes at Passion.io or with my fractional clients, ask myself, does this truly align with our commitment to creating environments where both businesses and people thrive? Even if a more efficient solution might generate better short-term productivity metrics, I need to feel confident that we're building sustainable systems that enhance rather than diminish the human experience of work, especially in our remote-first environment spanning 24 countries. How much of you resonates with that perspective?
So difficult. You're making it so difficult. I wished I knew what the other 3 are.
I know you do, but you
But
won't.
you know, I'm a all-in kind of person, and it resonates a lot. So I
Okay.
would probably say 70%.
Okay, now remember, you only have
I have
30% left.
I know, but you know,
Okay.
it resonates a lot with me, so I'm going to go for 70%.
Okay. All right, here's the next one. Are you ready?
Ready?
It's called the planner. It's the strategic operations visionary. So this persona focuses on long-term scalability and systemization, always thinking several moves ahead about how operational decisions will impact future growth. When making strategic decisions about operational infrastructure, global expansion, or people processes, I ask myself, what are the long-term implications of this choice for how organizations will manage remote teams, maintain compliance, and scale culture over the next 5 to 10 years? I need to map out how remote work regulations, global employment laws, and organizational psychology will evolve, ensuring our operational systems position companies for multiple possible futures while maintaining the scalability and adaptability that define successful remote first businesses.
Shoot. Yeah. That one's pretty good as well.
Yeah.
Too bad. I'm going to go for 15%.
All right. Leaving you with 15% for the next 2. So,
Correct.
planner. Did you have any whys on either of these before we keep going?
Yeah. Maybe for the first one, I can
Yeah.
share because that resonated a lot with me because I
Sure.
think there is just a lot about the philosophy of building a business that is important to not lose while you're scaling. I've seen that happening a couple of times where especially founders are just losing sight when they start and it's just them and a couple of people and they're all building the business and everyone's working on everything. And then once you scale, it's very different skill set that you need as a founder and also as a team. And I think making sure that you stay connected to the people systems that you want to build in your business is really, really important because that's going to bring you all the insights that you wouldn't have alone. That's why I gave it such a high percentage, because no matter how much I plan and how much I think, and I think we should do X, Y, Z, or I have this experience, if I don't bring the team into it and the diverse expertise that we have in a specific team, that's not going to get us far. So that's why this one resonated so much. But then again, the planner one is a really important one as well. I do want to see the long-term impact of whatever decision I'm making as much as possible because it's just necessary. You need to know what you get yourself into. So that's a little bit of an explanation for the first two. And now I'm left with 15%. So
let's see. Let's check them out. Are you ready? Here we go. This next one is called the counter. The Operational Innovation Challenger. So this persona naturally questions conventional HR and operations wisdom, often finding breakthrough solutions by challenging industry assumptions about remote work and people management. So when evaluating operational strategies, remote work policies, or people processes, I ask myself, what assumptions are we making about how organizations should manage distributed teams, measure performance, or maintain culture that might be fundamentally outdated? What is everyone else in the HR and operations space doing that we should question? Drawing from my experience scaling companies like Microdrones globally and building Passion.io's unique remote culture, I tend to dig into why certain operational approaches persist and whether there's a more innovative method that leverages our understanding of both labor law and business psychology.
It's a good one as well. The challenger approach. Yeah. That's good. I'm going to go I have 15 left, right?
Right. For two, and you still got one more after this.
I'm going to go for 10.
All right. Leaving you with 5% after this.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about your why here.
If I had a little bit more left, I would give it more, I'll be honest. But the background is, if we don't challenge the status quo, we're never going to move past what we've always done. These people who say, when you ask them, why are you doing something a certain way? And they say, because we've always done it that way. I'm allergic to that. Like a legit allergy.
Me too. Breakout all over. Yeah. Red hives. Yeah.
100%. So that's just something that I will never understand. I think challenging the status quo is one of the most important things you can possibly do in business and in personal life as well. Like, sometimes you need to sit down and think, why am I living the life I'm living? Like, is that really what I want? Or did I just kind of slide into it for some reason? And I think that's super important. So yeah, I'm very much resonating with that one.
Okay. So right now you've got 5% left for this very last one. Are you ready? Okay, this one is called the data driver, a metrics-based operations leader. So this persona relies heavily on performance data, compliance analytics, and concrete evidence to validate operational and people strategy decisions. Before making important decisions about operational processes, remote work infrastructure, or people strategy initiatives, I ask myself, what does our performance data actually tell us about employee satisfaction, or operational efficiency, compliance metrics, and business impact across different organizational contexts? I want to see concrete analytics on everything from ENPS scores and time to hire metrics to Glassdoor ratings and retention data that can validate our strategic instincts about where to focus our operational efforts for maximum organizational value and sustainable growth.
See, here we are, and I don't have enough percentages left. You're doing that on purpose, right?
I am.
I see it. Okay, so I have 5% left, but what I want to say is, I think data is super important. We're all biased. And I think the worst thing is if you don't admit it, if you think you're not, if you think you know everything, and from experience, you can make a call without any data or backing yourself up. I don't like that. I think having high quality data in all aspects of your business and decision-making processes is super important. So I think it's actually, I think it's one of the most important parts. At the same time, I think this is something that is related to competency as well. I've seen people do weird shit with data. Like, honestly, the same data that you would look at and you would be like, okay, this is what I'm seeing and this is what we should do. Other people look at it and they're the complete opposite. They have a completely different narrative. So working with data requires competency. It requires training. It requires experience. So I think this one is a topic that you can't just approach from here, I have some data to back up my decision, but you actually have to have a data-driven mindset to find out. I'm always trying to prove myself wrong. I think that's what you should do with data. And if you can't prove yourself wrong, then probably what you're trying to do is the right path forward. I see too many people and too many companies using data just to prove themselves right. And that's not how it works. So it's a sensitive one, and I think it's often misused, but I'm a big fan of backing yourself up and using data excellence.
I believe that you have to turn data into a less biased asset in the company by sharing it transparently as a source of truth consistently. And it has to always be relevant to what it is that you're actually deciding to do with it. And which means you can't do that if you don't have a shared sense of what relevance is. So there's like all this stuff before the data that actually needs to be done so that you can get the best use of it. So I agree with you. But hey, thank you for that. So let's recap what you've got there. You are 70% feeler, a lot of gut instinct in there, which probably goes with your expertise. And as a person who works as a fractional leader, which means when you go into an org, you may or may not have all the information, you may not have all the data, but you've got your expertise across multiple companies and organizations. That makes so much sense to me. And then you've got 15% planner, 10% counter, and 5% data driver. And you know what this makes me think, Eva? I am going to actually start tracking based on who I'm talking to, how much feeler we have, because I believe that there might be a link, some causality in being a fractional leader and being high feeler, because you're literally selling your expertise every day. So that's something I'm thinking about now. So thank you for doing that. What do you think about that exercise?
I loved it. I think it's super interesting. It's very like me. It's one of these things where you think, oh, typical, because I hear something and I'm getting excited. That's totally me. And I'm all in kind of person. So that it fits very well, I would say. And the one thing that I realized as well as a reflection on the feeler part, it's probably, as you said, there is a lot of default to action inside of me, because I think the worst thing you can do is just stagnate and analysis paralysis and just not do anything. So I do think that I learned over the last couple of years to trust my gut feeling, especially when it comes to two-way door decisions, right? So if it's about, should we test this or should we try this or should we do something? I think yes, probably. The answer is probably yes. Just go for it, just test it, and then make sure that you can revert it if necessary and it doesn't have an impact on your business that you don't want to see. But if all of these like rapid thinking and strategizing things are ticking the box for you, I'm very much for going with your gut feeling and testing something and doing something to learn, because I think learning is probably the most important thing that you can do.
I agree. Hey, so we're going to wrap up this conversation, and I've got one final question for you. So we've said this over and over on this podcast. You've had a lot of success helping to build and scale operations across diverse industries and contexts. If you were going to give one piece of advice to a leader who's looking to build something like what you've built, what would that advice be?
I think one advice would be to build decision-making frameworks, not processes. I like this differentiation because if you just tell people what to do, you're never going to get beyond this point. You're never going to scale your business. Instead, I like to teach people how to think about problems, how to make decisions. What are the things that in this company we're taking into consideration? What is your responsibility? What is your area of expertise? that you can use without getting like 20-step approval processes or whatever in place. And I've seen that helping so many businesses scale more effortlessly. So for me, it's always about decision-making frameworks over processes and teaching people how to think about problems and how to make decisions instead of telling them what to do in every single occasion.
That is fantastic advice. And thank you, Eva. Thank you so much for being here on the show today. Thank you for sharing this expertise with our audience. And it's been really great to learn from you, to learn about your approach to operations that genuinely serves both business objectives and human potential. So I really appreciate that. Would you tell everybody where they can learn more about you and more about the organizations that you support and work for?
Absolutely. So I would love to see everyone on LinkedIn. Just reach out to me. You're going to put the link in the show notes, I'm sure. So just connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message. I'm always up for a coffee chat. If you're in operations or remote work or people as a product nerd just like me, I love to nerd out about things. So just reach out to me. And if you're interested in working with me, everything you need can be found on my LinkedIn page as well. So just connect with me there.
Fantastic. And for our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please continue to support us. Remember, the best decisions come from great conversations. If you've enjoyed this episode, we would love for you to subscribe it, rate it, share it with your network. Let's keep the conversation going on social media using Dynamic Decisions Podcast. And until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep leading with purpose.